All right, great. I'll just give you the facts.
Okay, just the facts.
Just the facts. So I have been faculty teaching full-time at Texas State for 43 years.
43 years?
43 years.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was that long.
And I've been department chair for 20 years
Of
respiratory care and sleep medicine. And I became interested in sleep about 20 years ago as we were seeing the sleep industry begin to kind of not be an infant and kind of bud a little bit more. And they were looking for groups to align themselves with. And respiratory care was one that was a natural fit because the solution for sleep apnea, of course, is CPAP or BiPAP, a ventilation product that we were very used to and accustomed to using in the hospital. So there was a natural kinship between people that were professionals in sleep and people that were professionals in respiratory care. And that's really how we saw this coming on the horizon. So about 20 years ago, I was able to convince, I was not yet the chair, but I was able to convince the chair to look very seriously at putting in a 2-bedroom sleep lab in San Marcos. And so we did. It was really kind of miraculous because they were doing a remodel. And as a result of the remodel, they were going to have parts of the building just sitting. And this is Encino Hall on the San Marcos campus. Mm-hmm. And I reached out and asked, would it be possible to have some of that space dedicated as a sleep center? And administration was interested. And they basically told me that, that I could renovate. So I got to come in. We didn't do major things, but we popped in doors and took out doors to make it flow. And we had a nice 2-bedroom with a reception area with the tech room as well. So we're able to do that. And I reached out to a lot of different corporations and companies that make sleep devices and told them what we were doing and asked them would they be willing to make a donation. And so we were able to get about $160,000 worth of equipment in gift in kind. So the sleep lab cost us nothing to begin.
Nice.
And so we were there until 5 years ago, the campus in Round Rock, brand new building, Willow Hall, we were able to design a 4-bedroom sleep lab. And so that's where we currently have our sleep center is located there in the same building with respiratory care. It's very convenient the way all of that works. So I've had a real interest in sleep for over 20 years. Wow. And I have a PhD from UT in education. I'm a registered therapist, so I'm an RRT, registered respiratory therapist. I'm also registered in sleep in 2 different groups. One, I have the credential of RPSGT, lots of alphabet soup.
Yeah.
Okay. A registered polysomnographic technologist, that's one. And then registered sleep technologist is another. And then, of course, licensed as a respiratory therapist, and then also a fellow with my AARC national affiliation. So I tell the students, get as many alphabet letters behind their name as possible. It'll all come back and treat you well. And I've been real grateful for that. And so we have a 4-bedroom operating sleep center right now. Our students that are in our bachelor's program in respiratory care rotate through. Our students who are in our graduate program can actually choose a major in polysomnography and get a master's of science in respiratory care with a major in sleep. So they, of course, are down there as well. And we've aligned ourselves or have an agreement with Ascension Seton Williamson right next door to us. And so they basically are leasing the lab from us Monday through Thursday. The sleep techs are our faculty, and so we take care of them. But this has worked out real well because they did not have a centralized lab in the north part of Austin at all. They have one in Kyle. They didn't have anything else in Austin. So this has worked out well.
You staying busy?
Yeah, we're staying very busy. And Dell Children's is bringing children over. So we're doing children and adults and adolescents.
Man. So the 2 most important, not the 2 most, but 2 of the most important things a human can do. You're an expert in breathing and sleeping.
Breathing, sleeping is important. That's right.
They overlap a lot.
They do.
So, yeah, very excited to ask these questions because they're really important questions, not just for just people who want to be in shape, but just people in general.
Sure.
So with that, let's start about the 30,000-foot view on sleep.
Sure.
Generally, what is happening when we're sleeping And why do we actually need sleep?
And if you answered that question, then you get the Nobel Peace Prize, because it is still currently being researched, because sleep is so mysterious that any neurologist, any specialist in sleep will tell you, we don't have all the answers about why. Now, we can tell you what happens in the body to cause it.
Okay.
And so I'll defer to that just quickly. But we have neurotransmitters, chemicals and hormones that are released in our body that have a certain effect. They affect heart rate, blood pressure, everything. And the one that we all know a lot about now, but just because it's been talked about so much, is melatonin. So this morning when you woke up, Brian, your melatonin was at the very lowest level that it could be. And as you go through the day, melatonin begins to build. And so the levels begin to increase and increase and increase until about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, they're peaking out and you're very tired, you're sleepy, you want to go to sleep. If you're able to go to sleep and not working EMT, then you can go ahead and go to sleep. And then as we sleep, we break down the melatonin again while we're sleeping. And then when we wake up in the next morning, it is at its lowest level. So part of the neurotransmitter story is that when all these stars align, it induces a desire to sleep and a need to sleep, because where our bodies just really need a time to repair and to restore and to not be involved in things. And then I'd like to tell you what happens during the sleep cycles themselves, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's interesting because you mentioned, why do we need it?
Yeah. I've always been curious, like, it's just a given that we sleep, but like, why do we actually need to sleep?
Yeah.
Why don't we just keep eating and getting energy and just staying awake and just doing things? Why do we need to sleep?
Well, because someone like you wants to be productive 26 hours a day, and you don't want to waste your time sleeping. But sleep is very important. It's not a waste of time. In fact, I was just remembering there's a scripture verse in Proverbs that says, he gives his beloved sleep, which means sleep is a gift.
Yeah.
It's something that's given to us, and it's got to be good if it's given to us. So you do need to sleep, Brian, and unplug every once in a while.
I was created to sleep a third of my life. I hear that all the time, and whenever I actually do that, things usually go better. But when I don't do that, or I can't do that because of work, things are usually a little harder.
It gets tough.
Interesting. Okay. It still just boggles my mind that, like, we have to sleep.
We have to sleep.
It's
we do. And we sense this a lot when we cross more than one timeline, flying, and going to Europe or going to Asia. We get all messed up with our chronocycle and our day and night sleeping. And then finally we'll catch up. But the body is, the light is triggering all the time in the hypothalamus, the neurotransmitters that are needed for our bio clock. So our bio clock is about 23 hours. It's not exactly 24. So there's a little shift that takes place there. But the bio clock's purpose is to kind of keep us on this schedule. And that's why when we go over at least two timelines flying, we'll have kind of a bumpy time getting acclimated to day and night, when we land. Things can help that, like melatonin and those different kinds of things, and there has been some research about banking hours before you have an event, so that if you can sleep for 10 hours before you have a time when you're not going to be able to sleep as much, that's one thing. Catching up is almost impossible, but the research has shown, interestingly, that if you can bank some hours beforehand, then you'll have a better landing.
Okay. You mentioned melatonin. We can take it as a supplement.
Right.
How does our body is there something that, like, what makes melatonin?
Well, the hypothalamus of the brain is the sleep center of the brain, and we have little glands there that actually manufacture melatonin.
Okay.
Melatonin, also, we've heard a lot of talk about blue light. And
people
get blue light filter glasses. And
our phones now, they'll, like, try and filter off some of the...
That's right. So at 10 o'clock or whatever time you tell it, it shifts and everything becomes kind of a orange hue, instead of the blue-green. And that's because blue light literally chews up and metabolizes, if you want to think of it that way, melatonin, kind of like Pac-Man. So if melatonin is responsible for you going to sleep with those levels, But if someone comes home and they go to the bedroom and they have the TV going, blue light, computer, blue light, phone, blue light, even watch, they're chomping down on that melatonin level inside of themselves and reducing it so that they're not as sleepy. So you'll have people that say, I'm having a real hard time going to sleep, and you'll start quizzing them about, well, what's on in your bedroom, and they've got all those devices happening. So the bedroom should be dark. The bedroom should only be used for sleeping and sex, if I can say that.
Yeah.
But those are the only two things that the bedroom should be used for. If someone is not sleepy, they need to get up and leave the bedroom, go in the living room, turn on a reading light, and read a little bit or whatever until you get tired again.
So not associate the bedroom with anything else but that.
Right.
You don't want to have any of that kind of association with when you enter the room. The association should be, I go into this place to do one of two things. Yeah. That kind of thing. Instead of, I go in here and I'm going to read, like,
right.
Okay.
Well, continue to work.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the problem too, is our minds are going and we're using that as another workplace. It's just a desk that's comfortable to lay down on, and we're doing all things, writing notes and all those, and that stimulates us, and that in itself can keep us from, falling asleep. But the blue light really has an impact on that. And so, it's just good to keep that room dark,
Yeah.
There's
blackout curtains.
Yeah, blackout curtains could work fine, but not really necessary unless that is waking you up. But it's just real important to kind of keep that as a safe place to sleep. You'll have some people that will have such a hard time sleeping that they get anxious in the evening time when it gets dark, because that's associated with, I need to go to bed and I know I'm not going to sleep well. And so they get so anxious, and so they do everything they can to keep from getting into bed, because it's not going to be a good experience because they've gotten out of sync with everything. So trying to get them on the right path really starts with, first of all, black out the bedroom.
Okay. So when we are sleeping, let's say we actually get to that point where we're sleeping, what are the different cycles of the sleep?
Sure. This is so amazing. The way that sleep studies in medicine began was observational. So people that have little children, you see this especially when children fall asleep. Sometimes they look like they're just totally relaxed. Sometimes their eyelids may flutter a little bit, and their eyeballs even roll around a little bit. And children have the ability, when they go into the deepest part of sleep, you can literally throw them over your shoulder, walk out to the car, put them in the car seat, strap them in, drive home, get them out, take them to their bedroom, put their pajamas on them, pull up the covers, and they never woke up.
Must be nice.
Pretty amazing.
Must be nice.
Pretty amazing. But so the stages of sleep really came from observational. So if someone was sleeping and the physicians that were studying sleep were looking on, they realized that there was kind of, as someone became drowsier and drowsier, they went into their first level of sleep, and they said, the eyes are not moving at all. They're not fluttering. The eyeballs are not rolling. So this is non-rapid eye movement, NREM. And that's where NREM came from, non-rapid eye movement. And they realized as they studied it, and they put electrodes on the head to look at the stages of sleep and to learn about that, they noticed that as you were in non-REM 1, that was the lightest level of sleep, and at that, the dog can bark and you'll wake up, or someone can turn the doorknob and you'll wake up. So you're very, very lightly sleeping. Stage 2 is a little bit deeper. Your respirations will change a little bit because you really are literally in the sleep mode there. And as a result of stage 2, we then are open to stage 3 coming up, which is very, very important. It is slow wave sleep or delta sleep, and it's the restorative sleep. So the idea is, as you and I go to sleep and we start to drift off and we go to non-REM 1, and then we go down to non-REM 2 as we're falling deeper sleep, and then we fall into non-REM 3. And non-REM 3 is that restorative. That's when you wake up in the morning and you've had good non-REM 3, you wake up and say, wow, I feel great. I've slept really, really well last night. Because and non-REM 3 also has release of important hormones like testosterone. And, that's one of the ways that we got our football team involved in the sleep program is, we tell them, if you never get to non-REM 3, you're not going to have as much testosterone, and then you're going to run into trouble, physiologically. So after non-REM 1, 2, and 3, then we drop down into REM sleep, which we all have heard about REM sleep, the dream state.
Yeah.
The interesting thing that's happening here is that the wisdom of the body is that in non-REM, what's happening is my brain is sleeping, but my body is still active. And you notice this when you start falling asleep and you jerk. All right?
Yep.
That's called a hypnagogic jerk, and it's totally normal.
There's a word for that.
There's a word for that.
Okay.
So you're not just a jerk, you're a hypnagogic jerk. And the hypnagogic jerk signals that transition from awake to non-REM 1. You have just crossed the threshold into sleep, and your body will have that kind of reaction often. We don't do it every night, but it'll happen. But it's for sure that that someone's falling asleep if they jerk, right? So as they fall asleep, remember their brain is resting, sleeping. Their body can move. So in non-REM 1, 2, and 3, you can position yourself, you can change your pillow position, you can roll over, you can pull up the covers, never wake up. And all of that is just possible just because we have the movement of our body to meet our needs, whatever that is.
That's fascinating.
So if you get a little cool, if you've ever gone to sleep and you've had your blanket at the bottom and you wake up in the morning, the blanket's at the top. And sometime in the night you reach down and pulled it up, but you don't remember that. But that was, I'm sure, in non-REM. So when we get down to finally, we spend a certain amount of time in each of those stages, about 25 minutes in non-REM 1, about 30 minutes in non-REM 2, and about 40 minutes in non-REM 3. That's typical. That's, quote, normal.
That's not very much time for that last third that's so important.
So let me tell you what happens with REM then. When we get to REM, everything flips. Now the brain is alert and the body is asleep or even paralyzed. So when we go into REM sleep, what happens is our body has all the skeletal muscles are paralyzed, including the diaphragm somewhat. And so, of course, that's going to affect how deeply we can breathe. Have you ever had the experience where you woke up suddenly and you felt like you were falling and you couldn't move, or sometimes people will experience the feeling of falling. And what's happening is they're in REM dreaming, and then they get pulled up, non-REM 3, 2, 1, boom, and they're awake so quickly that their body doesn't have time to adjust to that. And people can wake up and they are totally paralyzed, and they think, "What? I can't scream."
Yeah. That's happened to me a couple of times. It's freaked me out.
Yeah, and what happened was you were in deep REM, and you suddenly woke up, and so you needed time to transition, but you didn't get the time to do that. So in REM, our brain is very active, and when we look at the brainwave patterns, so we know a lot about the EEG, the brain waves in sleep, because we can map out exactly how many to the second, how many that's different stages of sleep that the patient is in going through a sleep study. So they start in non-REM 1, 2, 3. The body is active, the brain is resting. Then we flip in REM. Now the brain is active, we're dreaming. And so those brain waves look almost exactly like what ours would right now. So it's gone through a whole transition, but now they're very alert because we're having all of this dreaming. But we have the body paralysis, and we'll be there anywhere from 5 to 40 minutes. And that's one complete cycle. So that's non-REM 1, 2, 3, then dropping down into REM, and we did all that, let's say, in 90 minutes. But you're going to repeat that 5 times in the night. So you literally have 5 dreams, 4 to 5 dreams every night, whether you remember them or not, because you went into REM. And when we go into REM, we dream. And so the body is, the seesaw is happening of rest and activity between the brain resting and the body resting and all of that back and forth. So we kind of get this experience, all the way through. So the next cycle, you start at non-REM 1 again, and you may slip down to 2 and then maybe go up to 1 because the dog barked, and then down to 2 and then down to 3 and get that wonderful delta restorative sleep, and then fall into REM. And then we complete that cycle. And so we'll do that anywhere normally from 3 to 5 times in a night.
That is fascinating. This
It
happens
is.
that many times.
It is. It is.
So, okay. So there is potentially how many cycles do we go through?
3 to 5.
3 to 5. There's 3 to 5 instances where we're in that first stage where it can be easily woken up, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So my Fitbit thing, it tells me if I've gotten lights. It tells me how much sleep I have received. I don't know how it actually knows that. I'm guessing it's judging by like how often I'm moving, and it tells me like you got an hour of deep sleep, which is I guess the third part of the 3, right? So it's saying, and the most I've ever gotten, even just like knocking myself out with sleep meds, the most I've ever gotten of the deep sleep is like an hour and a half. And I'm like, how is that enough? But it sounds like it's that third part of the non-REM.
Yeah.
I've gotten like an hour and a half of the non-REM sleep.
But that's probably good. It's probably okay. The thing about the watches are we have a watch that we put on our patients when we're doing sleep studies longitudinally for, a week to a month. Okay. And they keep this guy on. It's like a little Fitbit or like an Apple Watch. Except it's a little bit more sophisticated, measures a few more things, but they are accelerometers. So our phones, our iPhones and our watches, they're accelerometers. That's why we can, be in the car and even look at our phone and tell how fast we're driving, because it is measuring accelerating movement. And what they do is they make assumptions, and you're right. So they make assumptions. If you're going to sleep and you start getting still, and your heart rate starts coming down, then they have an algorithm they've written that says start the sleep study for the smartwatch. And then you have a little bit of movement and you're still, and you have a little bit of movement, and they're timing all of that. And the transitions from 1 to 2 to 3, as you get deeper and deeper in sleep, you'll have less and less movement. Okay. And so that's how it's going to guesstimate if you're non-REM 1, 2, or 3. And then when you get into REM, it's total paralysis. And then it recognizes that, and then it measures that. So it's able to do that, but it is just speculating based on movement. The thing that can confound that, though, is having a sleep partner. Because if they're moving around, then it's going to be sensing on your watch as well. And you're not going to get the proper reading. So if you really wanted to know what you alone, you have to do it solo.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then of course, having a sleep partner, you can also be wakened up in different things, that would normally probably happen. But we like our sleep partners, so we want them to stick around. But it is something to consider. We don't prefer children's parents to be in the room when we do the sleep study, because sometimes the parents will snore, and the equipment picks up the noise, and so we have to rule it out as that's not the patient's snore, that's the parent's snore.
Gotcha.
That kind of thing.
How much sleep do people actually need?
And that's, how many calories does each individual need? We have a prescribed amount, but then, it depends on what you're doing. Are you bodybuilding, or are you trying to really be thin and have a small amount of body fat? So it kind of depends on what your goal is and what you need. The averages come out to what you probably have heard, 6 to 8 hours. A night is terrific. I would say someone who gets 6 to 7 is probably about what we do in America. We're so driven by our professions, and we want to be productive. And here you are at 3 a.m. You want to be able to accomplish things, instead of sleeping. You go to Europe where they take holidays all the time, right? When do we take vacations, right? Maybe.
It's almost looked down upon.
Yeah, it is. It's like, is that really necessary? Do you really need to have a vacation? But in Europe, they take holidays really often, maybe once a month. They'll go for a long weekend, and, America doesn't have anything that we can correlate with that at all, because we're so busy being productive and accomplishing things, I think.
And as it reminds me of something you talked about, it like over in Europe, in high school, I worked at a dealership, and a lot of the workers in the dealership were Hispanic. And during lunch, they would take really long.
Siesta.
Yes. They took long lunch breaks, and they would like get there and they would eat, and then the lights would go out, and everyone would just kind of like sit there and sleep for like 45 minutes or whatever. I'm like, they're sleeping. Like, this is a cultural thing that's like worked into it, and like I love my naps. Like that's not a bad idea,
Yeah, it is very cultural, and there's a lot of countries that will do that. But let's talk about naps real quick, since it's something that's usually asked. Now that we talked about non-REM and REM, I can talk about it in a way that you'll really get, I think. And the deal is with this, have you ever taken a nap, been tired, taken a nap, and maybe slept a couple of hours and you woke up and you felt awful?
Yes.
You felt horrible.
Yes.
Why did I do that? I feel worse.
Made it worse.
I made it worse. Okay. What happened was you went through a couple of 2 cycles and you really didn't want to get there. REM is will make an individual more tired when they go through that cycle than if they don't. And let me kind of make it clear. The recommendation for a nap is take a nap if you need one. Now taking a nap every day and then having trouble going to sleep at night, there's a correlation there.
Sure.
If that's the deal, stop taking your nap. But if you've had a hard day, and some days you just are just worn out from the day, whatever it was, even if it wasn't very manual, but it was just you were exhausted, that you can come home and take a 45-minute nap. And that's the key, is set the timer on your watch or your iPhone to 45 minutes, because you just want to get non-REM 1, 2, and 3. You don't want any REM in there. REM is what's going to make you grog and feel terrible afterwards. So power nap, sure, that's great, but I would say 45 minutes is the max that someone should take, and then the alarm goes off and you'll wake up and you feel great.
That's really fascinating.
Give it a try.
Yeah. Well, I know some people who nap like a couple hours a day and they only sleep like 6 hours at night because they sleep for 2 hours during the day.
Sure.
But they can't make it a full day because they're just, for whatever reason, they just can't.
They've got that habit.
Yeah. It's probably it's a built-in habit. So people who are really fitness inclined and working out a whole bunch, they probably are going to need to sleep more. Huh?
They are. Because the restoration, you've got to, you've torn the muscle and now you need to let it heal and needs to rebuild. And so you absolutely need to sleep for that.
What if we don't? What happens to our bodies if we can't get enough sleep? What kind of bad things can happen?
Well, you just, you have symptoms that are gradually onset. Let's say it's a lifestyle that's poor sleep. What will eventually happen as they, get older even as well, they won't be able to concentrate as well. Hormone release is really inhibited, and so men can have ED. They can have all sorts of problems and issues without enough testosterone. There's many blood pressure will go up. There can be some cardiac issues that happen as a result of it. It's a really nasty domino thump to do that, and so there are things that maybe not are expressed in a week or two, but over the years it really deteriorates someone's health to do that.
It's like a full body, like not getting enough sleep will affect the whole body. Cardiac stuff, it can affect your brain. I feel like it's not going to help you recover well.
They've shown over and over that patients who are depressed and who are schizophrenic and have any kind of mental health issues, if they're not sleeping well, it's going to exaggerate and increase the impact of their mental disability. So one of the things that we used to do in mental health care was we tried to fix the mental health problem, even though they weren't sleeping well, tried to fix the mental health first and then treated the sleep second. Now, today, this is reversed. So now when someone comes in and has mental health issues, that healthcare provider, one of the first things they ask is, how are you sleeping? Because they found that if they can fix the sleep problem now, that many of the psychoses and the different mental health issues can even disappear.
Wow.
So they have, especially with schizophrenia, it really has a positive impact on schizophrenia to get enough rest. So there's another reason. It's mental health, and emotional health, hormonal health. It's all about sleep.
Yeah.
When you really think about it,
yeah.
It sets you up for your day. It defines your day. It defines your evening. And you just have to, we can be part of the planning process to, make our body fit into, whatever our needs are. If it's, work, if we've got, 24 hours on call or 72 or whatever it is, it's crazy. You just have to learn how to, sneak that nap in, do the things that you need to do, not overdo it.
Okay. We talked about how to set yourself up for success when it comes to like falling asleep, darkening the room, that kind of thing. Me personally, I struggle with once I'm asleep, I'll wake up around 3 a.m. And then it'll be hard for me to go back to sleep again. My wife is the same way.
Right.
And I have a couple of thoughts on maybe why that might be. One is because maybe I'm drinking too much coffee. I'm thinking if I don't drink any coffee at all, maybe I'll be less up, down kind of thing. And number two, maybe it's habitual things from having young kids, that kind of thing. Are those things true, number one? And number two, how can I fall back asleep better?
So all of those things, having young children, are affecting your life right now because, parents are disrupted. We wear those bags under our eyes and the dark circles with pride because it's a badge of honor. Taking care of these little ones. But so we'll talk about the things that we can do, foods and drinks that we can have that will help or hurt sleep. We'll in a little bit later. But melatonin is a great solution for the middle of the night. So waking up at 3 a.m. is pretty common. It happens, and it'll happen more as time goes by. And I'm not a real huge fan of taking melatonin. I have friends that I know have melatonin in their vitamin chest, and they take it every day. So if you take it every day, your body's going to sense the level of melatonin that you have, and the hypothalamus is going to say, oh, don't need to make any.
Oh, that's not good.
So you're not really helping, you're hurting. And so melatonin should only be used for events like I'm having 2 or 3 weeks of rough patch going to sleep. That's a great time to use melatonin, or crossing, 2 or 3 timelines.
Gotcha.
That works great too. But here's the thing. You can buy, over-the-counter melatonin. You can buy it all the way up to 10 milligrams, which is a nightmare to do 10.
That's so much. We have 5, and we'll do what I'll do sometimes is half a melatonin before I go to bed, just to help me kind of get there so it's 2.5. And then if I wake up, which I usually do, the other half.
So that's a great solution. I mean, and that may not be all of the problem, because it could be other things like you start thinking. It's too easy to plan your day. What am I going to do when I need to get up? What am I going to wear? And then the kids cry, and so you're off and running. But yes, that is the solution, is taking melatonin in the middle of the night if you wake up. 5 all at once can cause some people to have real vivid nightmares and even hallucinations. So you have to be careful. I mean, when you take melatonin, you need to be ready for bed, already have showered, already do everything, sitting on the side of the bed. Take it, get in the bed, lights out, and then let it work.
How fast does it work? How fast does it work?
It can easily work within 10 or 12 minutes. And the average amount of time, normal time for falling asleep, is 10 minutes. So
with the melatonin?
With regardless.
That ain't me. It takes me forever to fall asleep.
It
takes me forever to fall asleep.
You're solving problems.
A long time. I don't know if it's just my mind won't stop or what, but even when I'm really tired, if I'm at work and we had a call in the middle of the night, and it's I'm tired, when I'm back to sleep, and my body just won't, my mind just won't get there. It's I need at least a half an hour just to for whatever freaking reason. I hate it, but I've never been able to fall asleep fast ever.
Right. And white noise is another thing that can be used in the bedroom that's really helpful too.
Every night.
Yeah.
White noise
and
machine.
we tend to do that with our kids. It sounds like a jet landing in their room, because we have that turned up. But white noise and pink noise are really good to do that as well.
Okay. So if I fall asleep, waking up at 3, little melatonin's okay. Don't do it all the time, just for...
But if you're not going to be able to go to sleep, then get up, go get in another part of the house, read something, and, get sleepy again, then come back and get in bed.
Okay.
It's the tossing and turning and tossing and turning is no good, and it's no good for our sleep partner. So, it's just good to go ahead and just kind of get out of there and do something else. And then if you're going to end up being so charged that you can't go back to sleep, then at least you're not bothering the other person's sleep, and then you're ready to go. Go ahead and start your day. But, when you start feeling sleepy, give into it and go ahead and go back to the dark room.
So melatonin, and you're okay with. Yeah. How are you with other things like Unisom, like the Z-Quil?
Those are terrible things.
Oh, no. Talk about why.
So anything that is an over-the-counter drug that has a sleep aid, if it says PM and is a sleep aid at all is not good, because what it will do is it will specifically rob you of non-REM 3.
Well, that's the most important one.
The most important one. So there's an experiment that was done. This is kind of a classic. They took 100 college students, all healthy, okay, said, we'll pay you $100 a night to come and sleep in our sleep lab for 3 nights.
Sign me up for that.
Okay,
man.
sign you up. See, all my students would do the same thing. But you wouldn't want to when you found out what they did. So they got them all wired up, and they let them go to sleep, and they watched their brain waves, non-REM 1, non-REM 2, non-REM 3. And when they got to non-REM 3, they sounded a buzzer and kind of pulled them up out of non-REM 3 back into 2. All night long, they were floating between non-REM 1, 2, and 3, but every time they hit 3, they got pulled up by the buzzer. So they didn't rob them of sleep. They stayed asleep all night, but only in non-REM 1 and 2. So after 3 days, they tested them, and what they found was they had all become insensitive to insulin, and that they were all technically pre-diabetic.
No way.
In 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
It was the equivalent of gaining 40 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
As a diabetic. And of course, as they slept, then everything went back the way that it was. But that is just, I think, a glimpse at the hormonal releases and the things that are going on. We need all those phases, and 3 is so hugely important.
That is crazy.
In fact, that's, when we take our power nap, that's what we're trying to get to. Let's get to non-REM 3, and then I'm ready to wake up. And we get restored really quick. I mean, it can be 5 to 10 minutes in length of delta non-REM 3, and that's plenty.
There's a reason why, not letting someone sleep is considered torture. You always heard about that.
That's exactly right. It is.
It really is.
Oh, you hallucinate. Right.
I have these. I guess they're called night terrors, where I'll wake up and I'm seeing things that aren't there. Legit. Remember the last one I had? It was years ago. I get them. I get them every. I don't know. Well, I guess it depends on the season of life I'm in, but the last one I remember that I remember waking up and I was fully awake. I was not dreaming. Well, I woke up and this is at work, this happened. This when I was working. And on the ceiling, there were spider webs everywhere.
Wow.
On the ceiling. And so I took my blanket and I started gathering the spider webs with my blanket. And then I went and I made my way to the door of the bedroom, and then I dropped the blankets there. And that's when I kind of came to and was like, wait, none of that was real.
Right.
I was awake and alert the whole time, but I was literally seeing things.
Yeah.
What's going on with that? What is that?
Well, and that's a REM behavior disorder that can happen, when certain circumstances happen. Just like that hypnagogic jerk, is indicative. This is called a hypnagogic hallucination, and they happen when you get out of sync with the non-REM 1, 2, 3 REM thing. My brother-in-law was having trouble, and they prescribed Ambien, and Ambien's, you have to be careful with Ambien. A lot of people love it because it really does help them to sleep, but it can be terribly habit forming and all sorts of problems.
Does it rob you of the third of the non-REM 3?
No, it will, because it's a narcotic that will go.
It's a narcotic
that will go into the stages. It level 2, so it'll go in. You can go in the stages, and it's not a problem. But my brother-in-law was having trouble sleeping. He was taking Ambien, and he was getting up in the night, and I'm sure he had to have his eyes open because he would come into the kitchen. He would make a batch of cookies, put them in the oven and bake them, take them out, eat about all of them, go back to bed.
Come on, really?
Go back to bed, and the next morning he thought someone had broken into his house. It actually happened. And so he went to see the doctor, and the doctor said, okay, that's a REM behavior disorder. We need to get you some sleep. So there are crazy things. I don't doubt at all your experience. And you're remembering, that you used the blanket and everything, but it's someone kind of stuck in REM. And so you're not cycling out, and you're stuck in there.
Okay.
So,
man, that's crazy.
They locked up the oven. He's not making cookies anymore.
That's good.
Pretty dangerous, right?
That's crazy.
But you read about people that get in the car and drive.
I've been called out in the middle of the night for patients who kind of wake up in the middle of the night in their car and like, how did I get here? And like you find out like they had taken Ambien or whatever, and it's like they didn't know that would happen. It was like their first time taking Ambien and they didn't know what the effects would be, and sleepwalking. What is sleepwalking? Is that where you just described as sleepwalking? Yes, it's the same thing.
It's non-REM. I'm sorry. It's a REM behavior disorder as well.
So it's a disorder.
It's a disorder.
Sleepwalking is a disorder.
If it's perpetual. No, if you have one event, that doesn't mean that you report that as having had a REM behavior event.
Okay.
So, but people that have it constantly, you couldn't do that, right? First of all, you can't really sleep, and then how dangerous is it going to be that you're driving and you end up in another part of town, you don't know how you got there. That would be terrifying.
Yeah. So let's say I'm sleeping 8 hours and I wake up and I am like, I do not feel like I've rested. I need a sleep study. What's going to happen during that sleep study? What's it going to measure? What's the purpose of sleep study and all that?
Sure. We've come a long way in being able to test and diagnose. Now, let me just describe what the patient flow would be right now.
Okay.
So if you went to your primary care physician and said, I'm having trouble sleeping. By the way, with all my students, and when I lecture to physical therapy students and different ones, I always ask them, I ask the group, I said, how many of you have had your physician, when the last time you saw them, ask you, how are you sleeping? If you didn't go to them about a sleep problem. And usually you'll get maybe 2 hands raised out of 50. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, he got 2 right out of 50. Let's grade him. What does he get? A, B, C, D, or F? Mm-hmm. Physicians are getting a little bit better at it, but it's something that needs to be asked all the time. And so I really charge my respiratory therapy students to always ask the patients when they come in the morning, greet them good morning, getting ready for the first round of treatments, how did you sleep last night? It does a couple of things. It makes the person feel very cared for, which is true. But the other thing is to learn if they're having some problems. Maybe sleep is complicating their present condition and no one's even checked on it. So it's a real important thing to do. Yeah. So they go to the doctor and tell the doctor, I'm not sleeping well. And what he'll probably say is, well, your insurance requires you to have a home sleep study first. And so what will happen is he will get in touch with like a lab like ours, and the patient is usually, now they have one thing that COVID did for us is make everything disposable. So now the sleep study device that they send you is disposable. So they send it to you in the mail, and there's instructions of how to put it on. So there's like a finger probe for the oxygenation and the heart rate, and there's a chest belt to note chest movement for inspiratory and expiratory. There's a little cannula in the nose.
Entitled?
No, it's not that sophisticated. It's looking at flow, inspiratory flow when they're breathing in and out, and also timing the respirations. So you get about 5 chunks of information that, again, a physician will look at that and interpret that, but it's used only to say, yes, you do need a sleep study, or no, you don't need a sleep study. So it doesn't diagnose what the sleep issues are. It just says yes or no. Is there a sleep problem? So let's say it was yes, and so then the doc would script them into the sleep lab. We'd schedule them. They'd come in. And typically, it kind of runs something like this. Since we have 4 bedrooms, we have 2 sleep techs. One sleep tech takes care of 2 patients. That's the standard. So we have 2 sleep techs that are always there. And the patient would come in. We have 2 that come in at 9, and they get all wired up and then popped in the bed. And then we have 2 that come at 10, get them all wired up. Takes about an hour. Pop them in bed by 11 o'clock. Everyone's done, and it's lights out at 11 o'clock. And these are people that are very sleep deprived most of the time, so they fall asleep anywhere, anytime. And it's great in this nice, dark, quiet room that we have them in. And so they fall asleep, and we study them for 5 to 6 hours and take a look. It depends on what kind of test the doctor has ordered, but 5 or 6 hours, we wake them up, and then there's a wonderful bathroom in each of the restrooms, the bedrooms, and they shower and get ready for the day, and they can leave, or sometimes they'll go home and want to shower and everything at home. But basically, you just, there's some survey questions that you ask and that kind of thing about habits, like how much caffeine do you consume, and things like that, to kind of give a bigger picture of that. And the patients, don't seem to be traumatized at all by it. We've made even the looks of our sleep lab very bed and breakfast looking, because we want patients to walk in the room and feel encouraged and not terrified that they're in a hospital with a steel bed with white sheets and a nurse standing there ready to take a temp. So it's not like that at all. So at the end, all the data is then put into a data bank that the sleep physician, can look at, and he or she will absolutely award a diagnosis. And they'll say what kind of sleep problem is there, and then they'll have a recommendation. If the patient came in and they were showing definite signs of sleep apnea, what the physician can often do, and we do this more commonly than anything else, is about 2.5 hours into the study, when they quote qualify because of the number of apnea periods and breathless.
Apnea means not breathing.
Not breathing. If there's enough of that, then they will fit them with a CPAP device and let them go back to sleep.
Oh, so you'll wake them up and be like, hey.
Right.
This will help you sleep.
Yeah. And they pop them on. And so there's several different kinds. There's mask, there's nasal prongs, there's all different kinds. There's mouthpieces. And as a result of the testing, they will adjust the pressures up until the snoring stops and the breathlessness stops and the apnea stops. And that becomes their, quote, prescription pressure that the physician says. He'll say, I want CPAP at 12 centimeters of water pressure. And that only happened because the sleep tech took them through the paces to get them to places. That's where the magic happens. You get them to 12, all this disappears, all the problems are gone. And so that's our goal each time, is to find that magic number so that their device can be set on that.
Does snoring equal sleep apnea, or does it not?
It does not. It strongly suggests it, but it is not the same as sleep apnea. There's different reasons why people snore. Some people have a small box, the oral, we call it the box. It's their, open your mouth and say, ah. That size is very different from all of us. Some people have a small mouth. Some people have a large mouth. Some people have a large tongue. Some people have small tongues. So it's kind of a combination of your anatomy of what's going on. But basically what's happening with sleep apnea is when we're on our backs, which is the most likely position that we will have snoring or apnea, is on the back. And so we use the back position as the proof that we found the magic number. We'll get that magic number. They'll be on their side, but when they go on their back, if they're still able to breathe, then we go, wow, that's sweet. That's it. That's magic. So when we're on our backs, gravity is causing our tongue to kind of slip to the back of our oral pharynx anyway. And then as patients will begin to breathe deeper and deeper and deeper, the tongue will relax more and more, especially when you go into REM. And when we go into REM, when you have skeletal muscle paralysis, the tongue is also paralyzed. And so it's going to fall limp. Tongue falls in the back of the throat, and then everything is stopped up. So then what you see when you're watching that patient visually, and by the way, when we do sleep studies, we have audio and video of the whole thing with night vision, so we can make sure they're safe, like they're not trying to get out of bed or something. When they fall asleep, we'll make sure that we found that right pressure and everything, and they will be able to stay at that pressure and be able to resolve all of that apnea and snoring problem. But snoring itself is, basically the sound that's made of a partially obstructed airway. So when we're on our back, most likely place to do that, if you have any of the beds that are the adjustable beds, they usually have a snore button. And what it actually does is take the head of the bed up about 5 degrees, because that's just enough to kind of move the tongue forward
to defeat gravity
in the back, to defeat gravity. Exactly. So sleep apnea itself is a little bit more complicated than that. And snoring can kind of come and go. One thing I need to mention that's really important is that when we all fall asleep, all mammals, when we fall asleep, we become obligate nose breathers. We stop breathing through our mouth. We only breathe through our nose. If someone starts the night with a very stuffed up nose, they're going to have struggle. And we've all had those. When you have a head cold and you don't sleep well all night, it's because, we had to mouth breathe a lot. And then we have a sore throat because of that. So the nose breathing is problematic with some people. And so a lot of people have a deviated septum, don't even know it. It's really good to have a physician
what I learned?
Take a look.
What I learned is that a lot of people this is a small tangent, but this is really interesting. People that have deviated septums, a lot of the time, the doctor will ask them, have you had any kind of trauma? And they'll say, no, never had a broken nose. And they'll say, maybe you had it when you were born. Like a lot of people when they're born, like just the process of being born.
Yeah, the birth canal.
The birth canal is not a wide place. It's just not a wide place. And they can get facial trauma from that. And bones are really malleable and stuff. And they may have gotten a deviated septum as they were being born. And that's just how it happened for them. They have no recollection of broken bones, whatever. Maybe they're born that way, like before the delivery process, but maybe after the delivery process as well.
Right.
That kind of trauma coming into the world gave them a deviated septum.
Something?
It's crazy.
It is. Well, it's just so important to be able to breathe equally out of both nostrils. And so we'll test the patients before we put them down and make sure they blow their nose and do everything they can to clear as best they can. And then the apnea part of it is, just the blockage. And so when the blockage can be solved by CPAP pressure just lifting that out of the way, then your airway's open and then they can breathe fine. So that's what we look at, that magic pressure that will open up their airway so they can breathe carefully and easily from that. Snoring doesn't necessarily mean that you have sleep apnea at all. It is cause for attention about what's going on. If someone snores every night, and we have, uncles and grandpas that snore every night, but if you snore every night, then you probably have some form of sleep apnea, mild, moderate, or severe. The problem becomes if it's not taken care of, it can cause high blood pressure, it can cause cardiac changes, it can cause complications like if they have COPD on top of that. That's horrifically difficult. And so any other disease problem, any cardiac problem superimposed on top of sleep apnea is not a good thing. It's an extra struggle. And it's so easily fixed, so just get the mask, get the right pressure, and you're there. Now, you probably have seen on TV another solution that is now quite prevalent is, and I hate the way that they commercialize this. It makes me so upset every time I see it. But, they have all these people with CPAPs and they're wrestling with their tubing and I hate this, I hate this. And this person smiles and says, no mask, smiles and says, I just pushed the blue button. Okay? And then they don't tell you anything about that. It says, check with your doctor to see if this is right for you. Well, this is called a hypoglossal nerve stimulator. And it is a real thing, and it is being used widely now.
FDA approved?
FDA approved for individuals who cannot tolerate CPAP. You have to fail at CPAP first. So you can't just walk in and say, I want that. You walk in, they say, well, we need to try CPAP first. And then if you can't tolerate it, then you come back and you do this. And I have a friend who had this surgical procedure. He's a retired military, so he did it at the VA, which is pretty, amazing. So,
but sure is paid for, huh?
That's right.
Yeah, great insurance.
So what it involves is a battery pack, just kind of like a cardiac pacer, that's slipped under the skin. It's about a 4-hour surgery. This battery pack under the skin, and has a lead wire coming off of it that goes into the intercostal muscle, so that when the muscle expands and contracts, the electrical current senses what's going on there and it gives a response, I'll tell you. The other end of the battery pack goes up the neck, up the jaw, to the hypoglossal nerve, which controls the tongue. And so all of this gets laid open. I mean, when my friend had his surgery and I saw him afterwards, I said, my God, they have cut your throat open. I mean, it was like that. And it was stitched all the way, and it just looked awful. Well, it looks a lot better now, and I don't think people could really even see it.
Yeah.
But so the whole idea is this, is when the patient is taking a breath, this is for every breath. When the patient is taking a breath, remember the chest is going to expand, and so the intercostal muscles will stretch, and that signals the little device, okay, kick in. So then the battery sends a charge all the way up to the hypoglossal nerve, and it stimulates the tongue, and the person sticks their tongue out.
No way.
Every breath, they stick their tongue.
That's crazy, man.
So we call it the Geico. Because it looks like a little lizard or something.
That's crazy.
But they, all night long. And so what it's doing is...
Sorry, that's just... Picturing that in my head is so funny.
Don't go there, bro.
It's so funny. Okay.
So these individuals, every single inspiratory breath that they make, the tongue is being stimulated to move out of the way so that you can have the air.
Sorry, I'm trying not to laugh. It's so funny. Okay.
Pull yourself back.
Okay, we're here.
So they don't tell you that, right? They just say, press the blue button, okay? So the other things that you need to know about this little device is that when you press the blue button at night and you're ready to go to sleep, it gives you 30 minutes of non-intervention so you can fall asleep, because it really wants you to fall asleep
I would hope so.
before the juice turns on.
Yeah.
So my friends tell me that he's woken up at 3 a.m. and there he is sticking his tongue out,
Uncontrollably, I might add.
And he said, and a little bit of a tinny taste in my mouth, like electrical current or something.
Oh my gosh!
So then he turns it off and then he turns it back on and gives himself 30 minutes to get to sleep.
That's so
but I asked him. I said, "So how do you feel? Do you feel like you're getting a lot more sleep?" He said, "My snoring is solved." He said, "So my marriage is saved. So that's worth it." We save lots of marriages with correcting sleep apnea and snoring. Yeah. But he said, it's fine. I'm doing okay. He said, but I couldn't do CPAP. So I guess he's doing okay.
How do you fail at CPAP? Do you just, the pressure required is just too much?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked. Most people that have struggles with CPAP don't have a respiratory therapist to say, let's check the fit of your mask. Mm-hmm. Because what tends to happen is that individuals, when they put it on themselves, they will over tighten. So all the straps they pull real tight because they're thinking that's going to give me a good seal. What it actually does is make the seal pucker, and then they start losing air out the chin, around the eye, and they're miserable. And after an hour they take it off and say forget it. Mm-hmm. So whenever we have patients that come in to have a redo, that's one of the things to do. You put the mask on, show me how you do this. So we watch them do that, and if they're making mistakes, we'll correct that for them.
Facial hair can be an obstacle for a good seal.
Facial hair is a real problem. Yeah. So what we'll usually do is they have a full beard. We'll encourage them to come down to have a little, Van Dyke like I do or something like that. And that can be covered easily. But you're right, there's a lot of problem with facial hair. Now, it's going to leak a little bit, and it's made to leak a little bit. A CPAP is maybe about 75 cc's leak. But, it's not supposed to, blow everybody in the room.
Yeah.
So they'll often say that they fail for those reasons. They just can't tolerate it. It's okay you'll talk to some people and they'll say, because now these things are so smart, they upload to the cloud, and you can, on your iPhone, you can check and see how'd you sleep. Again, just kind of like what a Fitbit does, but gives you even more information. And the doctors can access that too. And so that's how they check on the patients. Is they can go to the cloud, pull it down, and say, I said you took your CPAP off at 2:30 in the morning.
Caught him.
So it tells on them. And then they say, well, let's make some adjustments. Maybe you've got too much pressure. Maybe you don't have enough pressure. Maybe it's ramping up too quick or slow, or maybe it's just a mask. So problem solving is a real need there to help people fit. CPAP is wonderful because it's non-surgical, non-pharmaceutical, and it can change your life with one night. We had a football player that was 21 years old that came to us. This was several years ago. And huge guy, okay? He's a lineman. And so he's built like a refrigerator. And he weighed 260 pounds, and 360 pounds. He was huge.
360, oh my
360,
gosh.
and he was 6'5", and his hand was so big. I mean, when we shook hands, I felt like a little kid. And he said, "I need help. I'm failing out of school. I can't stay awake even at football meetings, and I'm tired, so tired all the time. I can't get enough sleep." So the coach contacted us and said, "We've got a guy, you need to do a sleep study on him." So we did. He came in, we got him all wired up, and I told him, although he forgot it, but I told him, I said, "Now this is just a diagnostic night. We're not going to fix anything. We're going to study the way you sleep and see what we need to do." So he went through the night. Oh my gosh, the guy had over 400 apnea periods in a 6-hour period. It's like he could not even get through 1 minute of sleep without going apneic twice. And you just think, how could it? And so I asked the guy, and now you'll be able to answer this question, and our audience will be too. So when he came, when we were unwiring him in the morning, I said, "Let me ask you a question. When was the last time that you had a dream?"
We never even got to the...
That's right. And he said, "Oh, wow, no one's ever asked me that. Let me think. Maybe when I was 12.
Oh, poor guy.
Yeah. And I said, "When did they start making fun of your snoring?" He said 15, 16. No one wanted to... We go on, football away trips. No one would sleep in the room with me because I was too loud. So I said, "I want you to come back tonight." And he says, "I'm not really interested. This was too much trouble." I said, No. What if I told you without surgery and pharmaceuticals, I can give you the best night of sleep you have ever had in your life? He said, "Okay, I'll come back." So he came back, we got him all wired up, and we started the night with CPAP on him because we already knew. We'd done that diagnostic night, didn't need to split it. So we put everything on him. He says, "Well, this is not very sexy." I said, "Well, it's not meant to be." But I said, "It will keep you alive and keep you breathing." So got him away to sleep. Normally, and we've talked about non-REM 1, 2, 3, it takes time to get to REM, usually about anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes to get to REM, if you're moving fast, and that is moving fast. He dropped like a rock, like within 4 minutes into REM, stayed in REM, didn't come up for non-REM, stayed in REM for 3.5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And so we were saying, what Technicolor dreams is he having?
Seriously.
Oh my gosh. So when we woke up the next morning, he said, "Wow, I had these amazing dreams. Oh my God." So he said, "Tell us about it. So anyway, he said, and then he picked up the CPAP device and he says, "Just try to pry this out of my hand." I said, "Well, you can't take that one, but we're going to get you one that you can." And so we ended up get him treating. We got the prescription pressure, and he called us about 3 or 4 days later. He said, "Guess what? I took 6 pages of notes at my 8 o'clock class." And he said, "I've never even been to my 8 o'clock class."
Oh, man.
So there was a happy customer. That was a good moment.
Do you think his sleep apnea was because of how big he was?
Yes. So they've done studies.
Because Reggie White, football player.
Reggie White,
one of the best defensive men ever.
That's right.
Died of sleep apnea.
Yes.
Like...
untreated.
Young, yeah.
He was diagnosed, but he wasn't wearing his CPAP. He didn't want to do it. Untreated sleep apnea.
It can kill you.
So the percentage of American males that have sleep apnea in America is 4%. But they did studies of all the NFL football teams because of the linemen. And guess what? It's 34%.
Oh, man.
If you're an NFL football player, because 34% of the team are linemen.
Yeah.
So it's all of our linemen. They're our big high risk guys.
Is it because of all just like the gravity of everything?
It's the weight. It's the weight on their chest. Muscles weigh a lot.
Yeah.
And so you pack up, and then you're laying on your back, and everything's getting crushed and compressed, Yeah.
It exacerbates the issue.
So I told him, I said, you know what? We'll be able to take care of you with any kind of pressure. We got you covered. But I said, when you stop playing football, lose 100 pounds. There's nothing wrong with being 260 and 6'5". And then you'll be a healthy coach, a healthy husband and father, and life will be good. But I said, you may even be able to come off CPAP. And some people do when they lose enough weight. And again, it's all the pressure that's on their chest mainly, and the neck too.
So we mentioned nasal breathing, that whenever you're sleeping, you're primarily nasal breathing. I see people, there's this trend, I'm not sure how long it's been around, but there's a really big trend to like lift weights with this taping your mouth shut so you're only breathing through your nose. Like from being a paramedic, I know how important like all the structures in the nose are for breathing. Everything that like when air goes through your nose is better than going through your mouth because it cools or warms the air depending on what it needs, and it filters everything out. So when it gets to your lungs, it's not all whatever,
And the jury is still out. So right now, when you look, there has not been enough research on this to say that it's dangerous or not. They talk about possible things that are dangerous. Knowing what we know now, that we are obligate nose breathers, it seems like if you're not breathing through your mouth, that's a good thing. And I think from an anatomical point of view, it probably is. The thing that would get concerned about is, what condition do I have that caused me to become a mouth breather?
Yeah.
So if you have a large tongue, if you have big tonsils, if you have a small box, all of that stuff that is contributing to obstructing, I don't know that you're the best candidate for that. I would say, and I have friends that tape, okay, and they're afraid to tell me. I said, you can tell me, that's okay. And they say that they are sleeping better. They say that their sleep partner is pleased because they're not snoring. And they're able to, some of them are sleeping more through the night than they did waking up without. Well, I think that's really interesting. Everything's anecdotal right now. So when you do a literature search, it'll say, here's what people are reporting, but we don't have any NIH studies yet. I'm sure they're underway that really tell us what's going on with that. I would caution someone because, it would be miserable to tape your mouth and have an obstructed nose that you're only breathing through one nostril.
Yeah.
And some people don't know to check that kind of thing. How am I breathing with no, if it's equal, then I think that's one thing.
I'm equal.
Okay, there you go. So then I think if someone wanted to tape, that they could try that out. I might kind of panic waking up in the night and having tape over my mouth.
I bet in their non-REM 1 or 2 to accidentally pull it off. I don't even remember it.
Could be. And put it on their sleep partner.
Right. Interesting.
So I think it's the jury's out. That's all I'll say. And there's a lot of opinion.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of testimony of people saying they really help. So I think, if that's a problem, and someone doesn't want to do CPAP, and they have a snore problem, which may or may not be sleep apnea, you could try it and see what you think. But
my mind went to this like corrupt thought of like the CPAP industry, like trying to get all the research for this mouth tape away so that like because like what if that does help people? Like
sure.
what if that actually does, and that saves them from needing CPAP? The CPAP companies would be very upset about that.
They would. A piece of tape versus a big machine,
right?
There's no way.
But it is really important to figure out if you are a good candidate, because you might be treating the symptom, not the sickness. You know what I'm saying? Like you might not be a candidate for it. I don't know.
A little quick follow-up on our football player we were talking about.
Yeah.
About 3 months after we did the study, I got a call from a cardiologist in town who was checking on one of his patients that he'd sent to us. And he says, when I have anybody, that has some cardiac issues, I'm always thinking of sleep now. He says, especially if they have congestive heart failure. He said, congestive heart failure is the most misdiagnosed cardiac issue because everyone just wants to jump and say that's what it is. But he said, sleep apnea can look just like congestive heart failure. But anyway, he called and was checking on a patient lineup, and he said, by the way, he's been HIPAA careful. He said, by the way, I heard you were taking care of a young man that I've been taking care of on the football team. And I said, yes, we did. And, I think we really got some good results for him. He says, well, I want you to know he is very compliant with his CPAP. And he said, I've taken him off of 2 of his cardiac arrhythmia drugs.
Oh my gosh.
You're thinking you're playing football? And 1 of his blood pressure medicines. I said, well, that's good news, but I'm shocked that he had to have them. Yeah. And he said, if you guys hadn't intervened, he says, I don't think he could have lived past 35.
Yeah. Can you imagine like all that damage to like the whole body? Do you lose brain cells from like sleep apnea? Because like doesn't your oxygen, here's interesting. So during paramedic school, we would, on our OR rotations, whenever we'd practice intubating people, we would like over-oxygenate them and all that. And they would sedate them, paralyze them, and then we go in with the tube and try and tube them, right? We could be trying to tube them for like 45 seconds to a minute, and they're apneic, not breathing. And their sats wouldn't drop, but like 1% or whatever.
Yeah.
So do you think that it takes a while? So, but do you think it's possible for people to like lose brain cells and like brain damage happen from just so much sleep apnea?
I do. I think there's cardiac damage too. So I think it's neurologic, and then it's also cardiac, because we'll have patients that will drop down to their SATs 72.
Oh no, that's bad.
Which means they have a PO2 in the 40s.
Oh gosh.
So they're really in bad shape, and they do that all night long, and they've been doing that for years and years and years. Man. And then they have a cardiac issue as a result of that, and maybe who knows if there's what kind of neurologic impact, if that contributes to dementia. I don't know. Mm-hmm. There's speculation out there that it does.
The sleep apnea is correlated with dementia?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. And it probably is related to oxygenation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing how well we function with oxygen. Yeah. And it's amazing how poorly we function without it. And breathing all through the night is so important to keep oxygenation right.
Yeah.